Hello and welcome to the Flex. Matt St. Jean and Joe Howie here as always. We're going to get in and out of this one quickly because the Giants have a Super Bowl to play later this afternoon based on Joe's gear here. Just a reminder, this podcast is presented by House Enterprise in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com for more info. I just put up the weekly power rankings. Go check those out. Thoughts on the conference as a whole. Good stuff there. Friars actually not moving up in the power rankings, mostly because some other teams have done good stuff since the last time we put them out. 3 wins in a row now for the Friars.
Yep.
2 since the last time we talked to you. Both of them were dominant wins, 40 and 38-point victories. This is what we wanted.
This is exactly what we wanted. I think, I speak for myself and for a majority of the Friar fan base when I said a lot of those 14-point wins, like a win is a win, so you take it, stick it in your pocket, and you move on. They didn't feel like 14-point wins. I think that was also the period of this non-conference slate when the team was still coming together a little bit. Identities were being formed, roles were being carved out. Now the 40-point win over Manhattan, the 38-point win over UAlbany, those felt good. It felt like we're settling into our own and we're kind of striding. Take with that what you will, because these are opponents that you're supposed to beat by 40 points. You're supposed to cover the spread against these types of teams. So again, take it with a grain of salt. It's all relative, but the team looked good. It looks like they're taking these games as what they're supposed to be, which is tune-ups before conference play.
Yeah, and when I think one of the things that's kind of telling about how the Friars played here, if you look at the Ken Palm rankings, after that game against Ryder in the opener that was close, even though the Friars won, it's not a good team. You played them closer than you should have. You dropped 9 spots just because of that one game, even though you won. These last 3 wins against URI, Manhattan, and Albany, Friars moved up from 81 to now 68 as of us recording this. If you're moving up like that, it means you are outperforming what the computers expect you to do against these teams.
Yep.
Computers are usually pretty good at getting things in the ballpark. So if you're outperforming it, you're doing well. You have to, it's obviously you could say, oh, it's a 40-point win against those teams. A 40-point win is hard to do. These are real teams. They're not laying down in front of you. Obviously, these teams are in bad spots right now with their coaching situations. It's still guys who are going to go out there and play hard. And you dominate both of them from wire to wire as an accomplishment.
Keep in mind, this isn't the Boston Celtics we're talking about. These aren't professional athletes that do this for a living to make millions of dollars. These are 18 to 24-year-old student athletes. Yeah. So beating other 18 to 24-year-old student athletes by 40 points is not easy. And I think Cooley, he talked about that in the press conference. Like a lot of the writing is very negative around certain players in college basketball. Like this is a hard thing to do. It's not easy to go out there because you forget that the other players on the other side of the court have pride. UAlbany comes into this game and thinks, you know what? Like the Providence Athletic Department paid us to be here. This is a buy game for them. Why don't we upset them on their home floor and ruin their non-conference? Like those kids come in with a chip on their shoulder because of the conference they play in, because of, the level of competition that they play against. This is their Super Bowl, like you said about the Giants playing the Eagles. That was UAlbany Super Bowl. That was Manhattan Super Bowl. So it stinks for them that they lose by such a significant margin, but that's not easy for this Friars team to do that.
No, and I think you go back to the Manhattan game on Wednesday there, Friars get out to a 29-13 lead in the first 10 minutes. I think we kind of talked about slow starts out of the half for this team, and 29-13 in the first 10 minutes, and then the first 10 minutes of the second half, 28-14. So they're coming out and blowing the doors off you right out of the locker room there. And really the same thing happened in the Albany game, 20-12 in the first 10 minutes, 29-17 in the first 10 minutes of the second half, just taking control of the game way you wanted. I think Bryce Hopkins is going to be the biggest story for me out of this. He won Road to the Garden Player of the Week because of his performance. And I think the most important part, it wasn't what he did, it's how he did it. He is the focal point of the offense now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He came out, he played his game, they ran the offense through him, he looked assertive, and that's the way this team should be now. That's the identity.
For me, the most important thing about Hopkins and what he produced this week is he looks comfortable doing it. I think through the first half of non-conference, I won't say that he looked uncomfortable, but what he was doing looked a little foreign to him, and you can't blame him at all. He played 6 minutes per game at Kentucky and really only had one outstanding performance. Now he's come in, he scored in double figures each of the games. He's averaging, what is it, like 15 points a game? He's coming in and he's doing what he was projected to do out of high school. Took him a year. That's fine. Again, college athlete. This is the first time he's ever been asked to do this. But now he looks comfortable doing it. And I think that's the most important thing, especially now. You look ahead, you look on the horizon. After this 3-game win streak over URI, Manhattan, UAlbany, you're going into conference play, and your conference opener is on the road. So, again, this is a team that's only played 2 true road games. So, true road game number 3 against Seton Hall. If Hopkins is looking comfortable, I feel confident going into that game.
Yeah, and you're going to go against a team there in Seton Hall that they've got wings, they're physical, and they're going to play good defense. So that'll be a big test for Hopkins, and it's good to see. All right, he did what you wanted him to do against these teams. Now you take the next step. He's kind of he completed step 1. He looked as good as you could have expected against these teams. And this is still without him shooting the 3 ball particularly well. I think he will add that to his game at some point. So if he can do this without that, then eventually when that comes in, that's where he takes that part. That's part of him taking that next step. I think it's also huge in that it frees up the other guys like Bynum, Croswell, Carter, Locke. All these guys are better served as kind of secondary scorers and secondary aspects in the offense, and now they're freed up to do that without the pressure. And I think for Croswell in particular, I think that's really helpful.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, because Bryce Hopkins is taking a lot of the scoring load, guys like Ed Croswell and Devin Carter look like all-stars right now because of what they're doing. If Bryce Hopkins isn't in this equation, he's not scoring at the level that he's scoring at. Croswell and Carter, they look like they're overperforming. Now they look like this is what you're supposed to do with Hopkins taking a bulk of that scoring load.
Yeah, and it's awesome. Here's a stat for you. I brought this up on the our Road to the Garden podcast earlier this morning, which you should go check out. Tommy and I talked about Creighton, Villanova, and all kinds of stuff going on in the conference. A little Big East, a little Providence stuff on there. Ed Croswell is currently 3rd in the nation in offensive rebounding percentage.
That is Croswell cleaners, baby, as advertised.
Yeah, and the Friars are just like the way the roster's put up. This is not going to be a great shooting team from the outside. It's not going to live off of those, but you can feel much more comfortable taking those shots because you think you're going to get more second chances when he's out there, and you can create that stuff. Where all right, doesn't matter if Noah Locke or Devin Carter's missing a 3, or if Bryce Hopkins hasn't dialed in yet there, or Jared Bynum, which we're going to have to talk about in a second. If these guys aren't hitting shots, we're going to be able to take those and still get extra opportunities around the rim and get some looks in the paint out of it.
I'll tell you, Matt, in a year where the Big East is dominated by forward and big man play, I don't necessarily hate that we're not the best 3-point shooting team. Because if we can compete with where a lot of other teams are going to, focus a lot of scoring, if we can compete at that level in the paint with everybody else, again, I feel confident. Will we roll through conference play to the top? No. But if we're going to compete against a lot of the big names in the league, I think, Kalkbrenner, Sonogo, Nunji, if we're going to compete against those guys with our bigs, I feel confident.
Yeah. And that's, I think the big question for Providence is going to be how the Friars handle some of the size and the rest of the conference. I mean, UConn looks like it might have 2 of the best centers in the country there with how Donovan Clingan is playing. Obviously, you got Kalkbrenner at Creighton. Joel Soriano has...
Oh, I forgot him.
Soriano's a double-double machine this year. Eric Dixon is currently rated as one of the best players in the conference, according to Ken Pom. He's been incredibly efficient on offense. The defense isn't there with him, but on offense, he's very efficient. Nunji, like you mentioned, Osa Igutaro from Marquette has been really good. I mean, there's just so many guys, and so many of these guys are 6'11", 7 feet or taller. I think that's where Clifton Moore.
I was just going to say.
Yep.
Enter Clifton Moore.
Rafael Castro, potentially a little bit too. I think we saw in the second half against Albany, he started to put things together a little bit more, which is good. Just seeing a little bit of development from him is nice.
No, yeah, I agree. Who was it? Castro had a double-double yesterday against Albany. That was nice to see. No, and that's what taking a step back here. That's what you get with these types of games too, is where you're beating the doors off the opponent. Guys like Rafael Castro, like Corey Floyd Jr., they get their run. So does Castro play more of a role than Clifton Moore in conference play this year? Probably not, because Clifton Moore is that senior player, right? But it's nice to see these glimpses of athleticism, these glimpses of potential out of Rafael Castro in games like yesterday. Because when you're playing the DePauls, the Georgetowns, the Seton Halls of the world, like the teams that haven't been doing what they're supposed to do, that might be a time when Rafael Castro can come in and do some work.
Exactly, exactly. And you never know. With a guy as athletic as him, sometimes it just all comes together at once.
Right.
And if it comes together in one of these games, all of a sudden, all right, he's going to get minutes and he's going to get run and he's going to be an impact. So we'll see what happens there. I think we've seen Alan Breed continue to look very good. I think what did he have? He had 12 points against Manhattan there, 2 of 2 shooting inside the arc. He knocked down a couple triples in that one. He had 10 points against Albany. I tweeted out, this got a lot of love on the Flex account, was Alan Threed.
Alan Threed, yeah.
He's looking good. I'm really excited for him.
I'm happy for him as a player. And this is something Cooley talked about in the presser yesterday, is that, Alan Breed is the type of guy who puts his head down and grinds. He's not like a majority of college basketball players where when the going gets tough, you hit the transfer portal. Alan Breed has stuck it out. Not a lot of playing time last year. He obviously had a big impact his freshman year, and now we're starting to see that unfold on the court. He's coming in, he's putting up consistent minutes, he's scoring. That's the most important thing. We always talked about him as a consistent defensive player. Now he's providing a little offensive punch, which is, a next level to what he can provide off the bench. So I'm happy for him as a player too, because, he's one of the more quiet guys and off the bench, seventh man type role, but now he's providing an impact, and that's going to be huge down the stretch here.
Exactly. If he's giving you 6 or 7 points in some of these games, that can be the difference when it's Big East play and every game is close.
Yep, exactly.
I think we're going to wrap up here. Is it time to return to the Jaden Pierre and Jared Bynum discussion here? Pierre 11 assists last game, and I think the passing has probably been his biggest weakness at this point. He's aggressive. He makes mistakes, and that's okay. He's young. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Last game was one where he didn't make as many mistakes, and he's finding stuff. Bynum is the worst shooter on this team right now, basically, no matter how you slice it. Overall field goal percentage, 3-point shooting percentage. He had that one. He looked good at URI. We thought he was back. This week has been a return to really rough stuff. He's still one of the best passers in the Big East right now, which with Bryce Hopkins stepping up, you can live without some of the scoring, but this is, oh boy.
I mean, the jury is still out for me with regards to writing off Jared Bynum. I still think he is one of the most important pieces to this team, like you said, Matt, because of the passing. He has been through our system. He knows the offense. He knows how Cooley likes to run things. If Providence is going to be successful in Big East play, Jared Bynum needs to be on the floor, just from a know what to do standpoint and a passing standpoint. But like you said, the scoring is really concerning. And you just really don't know how to frame it, because if you take away Bynum's hot, 6 or 7 game streak from last season, this looks on par with what he did his first year with the Friars. It looks on par with this non-conference. So, everything is relative. So Bynum was hot for a month last season. I don't think we should use that as, what we're comparing him to, but it's hard not to because of how good he was.
Exactly. And it's a tough situation. I mean, he's a good player, and I don't think there's any doubt there, but if the shooting isn't there, things get rough. And I will say, in his defense, like Jaden Pierre only had 2 points yesterday.
Right.
Bynum outscored him. I mean, he was 3 for 3 inside the arc. It's the threes to me that are the most concerning part, because I think he still has that ability to drive to the rim. He's not he's undersized, so he's never going to be elite at that, but he's fine. And if other guys are performing, like if Bynum is your 4th or 5th guy on the court on offense, and he's just going to set the table and set things up and set up entry passes and run the offense, you can live with that. I just question if that's going to be good enough when you're playing UConn in the start of January.
I think, too, when I think about Jared Bynum from last year, I think about a lot of his scoring coming late in the shot clock. I don't think they were necessarily drawing up plays for him, like 3 seconds into the shot clock to take a 3 or to drive to the rim. I think Bynum was kind of that fail-safe when you look at last year's offense. I think the difference now this year is we haven't needed a fail-safe because the guys like Hopkins, the guys like Croswell, the guys like Carter are doing the work when it's supposed to be done.
Mhm.
So there's no need for Jared Bynum to tuck his head and drive to the rack late in the shot clock because we've scored at that point. And again, these are bunny teams, so that is likely to change once the level of competition steps up in conference play. But I
Mhm.
think if you look at when Jared Bynum was scoring last year versus when he's looked to score now, it's a little bit different because we don't necessarily need Hero Bynum to make the bucket. That's my take on it, at least. I'm sure there's numbers to back that up somewhere, but that's at least what I've noticed, from the naked eye.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember too that it is early in the season.
Yeah.
And he was hit or miss shooting at the beginning of last year too. So there's plenty of time for him to turn it on, and he doesn't need to be the team's best shooter. I think you just want to see him bump up the numbers.
Yeah.
Be good enough to be your second or third option from deep. Be good enough to finish on your looks to the rim. Be good enough that the defense has to respect you as a shooter. You don't have to be that good to do it. You just have to be decent. And I think what's helped is Devin Carter shooting the 3 ball a little bit better this year than he had in the past. He's at 30% right now. He was sub 30 at South Carolina last year. So he's a little bit better. He's given you some of those Justin Minaya performances.
Yeah.
Even Al Durham had really bad shooting numbers last year, which I think is in part because he played so much of the year with that hernia. I think before that he was a better shooter.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Devin Carter was giving you a lot of those same minutes in a lot of ways. He's giving you a little bit of Minaya and a little bit of Durham when he's out there.
Devin Carter, I think, has been the biggest surprise for me this season. I wrote about this in my last piece for Road to the Garden, but Devin Carter came in, and obviously all the hype was around Hopkins. I think Hopkins was the crowning jewel of this transfer crop that Ed Cooley brought in. But you knew, Carter's, he plays bigger than 6'3". He's savvy defensively. I think he's overperforming right now. The steals, the offense, he's giving us much more than advertised. And I think the part about that makes me most excited is he's only a sophomore. He's just going to continue to get better. And right now he's the team's second best player.
And I think that Carter Breed rotation at shooting guard is really nice because Breed is a really disciplined player. He's going to take a limited role in the offense. He's very efficient there right now, making his looks. And he's never really he's not going to make a ton of big plays, but if the play comes to him, usually he makes it.
Yep.
Devin Carter's kind of the opposite. He's going to be all over the floor, and he's going to make bad plays because he's trying to make every play. And he might force things sometimes. There's going to be moments to make you go, "What are you doing?"
Yep.
And then he'll make some really nice stuff. He'll get a fast break and dunk it, or he'll make that shot, or he'll get an offensive rebound or whatever. And I think having that rotation of splash versus consistency at that position is really nice.
I think the funniest thing about his breakaway dunk from yesterday is he quoted the Providence men's basketball tweet, or maybe it was Fox's tweet, I forget. And he goes, "I wasn't even sure if I was trying to lay it in or dunk it." And if you rewatch it, knowing that, you're like, okay, I can see it. He hesitates, and then he's like, "I'm already up here. I might as well slam it down."
Yeah. Oh, I love. He seems like a great leader. There's that tweet he put out.
Yeah.
That after the TCU game about Tyler getting better.
And then after the URI game, he goes, "Told y'all." This is going to be a Yankees reference, so I know a lot of our listeners aren't going to understand it, but he reminds me of Rugnet Odor, a big locker room guy, tries to get the team to buy in. You're not the Aaron Judge of the team. You're not the best player, the captain, what you will, but you're the guy that's buying in and you're trying to fire everybody up. That's how I see Devin Carter on this team. Again, a lot of Red Sox fans that listen to this are not going to understand that reference, but
he's almost like a Dustin Pedroia. That's probably the comparison I would make. Yeah. If that 3-point shooting stays where it is now, or even gets a little bit better, if he can keep it there, okay. Well, now he is he's more than just a role player. He'll be a really, really good player. He'll be one of the best players on the team. Yeah. No, you got to go. So we're gonna wrap up here quickly. I want to focus on one last thing. What Ed Cooley said after the game. Quote, "We have a feel of who we are and what we are as we get ready for Big East play next Saturday at Seton Hall." Contrast that with what he was saying before the start of the year, where we don't know what we are. We don't know how we're going to play. We're still figuring things out. That matches the eye test for the way that this team has come together over the past couple days, couple weeks, couple games. And that's why I think there's a lot of optimism here. The team figured out its identity, figured out the roles, figured out how it comes together just in time.
We Matt, in a lot of our preseason material that we put out, you and I talked a lot about Cooley's attitude about the team going in, um, and that kind of matched the performance on the floor. Is there were glimpses of greatness, there were glimpses of Hopkins taking over, glimpses of Devin Carter doing this, Ed Croswell doing that, but it wasn't all together. It looked very disjointed. The
Hmm.
past week and a half, the past 3 games, it looks like everything is starting to click, and the result is clearly evident in the way that Ed Cooley's now talking about his team with conference play on the horizon. So I think that's a great takeaway. I think, too, if you look at the way that this non conference schedule was constructed comparatively to last year's non conference schedule was much more difficult. There were more quality opponents on there. I think because there was a feel that this team is bringing in X many seniors. Like they're
Hmm.
going to mesh much quicker than this team is going to.
Hmm.
And I'm happy with the way we constructed our non-conference schedule because you had some tough losses on there, but those are losses that you learn from. And in the
And they don't.
meantime, you have a couple of tune-up bunny games where you really, you get to know your team, you get to know your identity, and the result is you go into conference play. I'd say a healthy 8-3. That we could be in a much worse position right now comparatively across the conference. A healthy 8-3 with your identity starting to take shape.
Yeah, and it was all chalk. Like
Yeah,
they didn't win any games that they weren't supposed to. Didn't lose any games they weren't supposed to. It kind of went,
exactly.
yeah, and which is you can take it. They didn't do anything exceptional, but
No,
there's good teams in the Big East. There's opportunities for that. I'm not worried about this team getting quad 1 or quad 2 looks here down the stretch with how the Big East is.
yeah,
When the bottom line is now you win 11 Big East games, you're dancing.
yeah. You,
Got to
you,
go over 500. Yeah, 10 might even do it, but I think 11, get to 19 wins overall, that'll get you in.
you have a blank resume right now going into conference play, and I think that is perfect. We've seen Friar teams in the past go in with a really shitty resume. Sorry for the French, but like you've seen Friar teams go into conference play like with some really devastating losses, and you have to make up the slack by knocking off the top 5 teams in the conference. Like now you go into conference play, clean slate, you win the games you're supposed to, you maybe win some games you're not supposed to. Like you said, Matt, I think 11 is the magic number. You
Yeah.
get 11 conference wins and you're in the dance.
Yeah. And I think at this point, let's say UConn, with how good UConn looks, let's assume that's 2 losses here to start.
Woof.
But that's
No, I know.
win the rest of your home games, sweep Georgetown and DePaul, you're in. That's all it's going to take. You don't need to beat UConn to make this happen. Just win your home games, sweep Georgetown, DePaul, you get it done.
Yeah. It's as simple as that.
It's not. There's no rocket science here. There's no crazy math. Like you got to win 6 out of 8 to end the season, or you got to just win your games. Win the games you should.
Yep.
All right, that's gonna do it for us. I'll let you go watch your Giants Eagles game. We'll probably be back with you for a Seton Hall preview at the end of this week, so stay tuned for that one. Big East plays around the corner, and follow us on Twitter at the Flex Hoops, at Joe Howie, at Matt St. Dream, at Matt St. Dream. We'll be I forgot my own name there, but yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
Go Friars.